Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 24 of week 5. The title of today's lecture is Constituents and Phrase Structure Rules. So, in today's class we will be talking about the idea of constituents and we will also discuss some tests for constituency, and finally we will be introducing the idea of phrase structure rules. So, if you consider the structure of sentences, if for example, I ask you to answer this question on the first bullet point, what do we mean by the structure of sentences, you can simply say that a sentence is a simple linear string of words. Please pay attention that I have highlighted this part linear and string, and this I have done purposefully. I am asking you to focus on these two terms, but when we consider the internal structure of sentence or internal structure of any sentence rather. So, how will you consider the internal structure? How will you answer this question? How is it represented in our mind? We know that the relationship between language and mind is an important component of syntax. So, we can say that words in a sentence are grouped together into units which are known as constituents. So, in order to analyze sentences we do need certain tools. Constituent is such a tool. So, we can say that certain words are together creating certain units like constituents. How will we define the constituents? We can say that constituents are grouped into larger constituents and then we get sentences. So, basically you have a constituent and then another constituent will be embedded and then larger constituents will be formed and then finally, we will be getting a sentence. So, if I ask you to pay attention to these sentences A and B, we are saying the cat loves cold milk and the cat loves plastic toys. So, the relationship between the cat and the cold milk is exactly the same kind of relation that we can find between the cat and plastic toys. So, we can say that certain words are more closely connected to each other inside a sentence. You can say that the cat is basically the relationship between the and cat are very close, and cold and milk they are also together creating a kind of chunk. So, if we consider constituents and the structure, we are saying here that the and cat are closely related to each other, they are forming a bigger unit. These two words are forming a bigger unit together, which is a noun phrase or NP. So, we can represent the NP in two different ways. We can have simply a bracket and the cat, a linear string, or we can have a hierarchical representation where we are putting the and cat in a tree diagram. So, how do we define a constituent? We can say that a group of words that function together as a unit is a constituent, and constituents are embedded one inside another and they form larger and larger constituents. So, you analyze the structure of a sentence and consider the constituents like NP, there are other XPs and then we are considering the embedding and then they are forming the larger constituents and a sentence finally. You can understand that this is a hierarchical structure. So, when we had a hierarchical representation of the NP, the cat, we said that this is a tree structure. Such structures are known as tree structures. So, here is one tree structure for you and I am asking you to find the number of constituents here. So, if you consider XPs like NP as a constituent, how many constituents are you finding here? So, you can just say TP, NP, VP, NP, adjective phrase. There are different kind of XPs here, right. We can have tests for constituency. So, we do not know which are the words which are closely related to each other in a sentence, and we need to figure out the constituents in a sentence. So, how do we do that? How do we understand that certain group of words are constituents? We can actually conduct some simple tests. What are the tests? The first one is a substitution test, then there is the coordination test, and then there is the movement test. Let us learn more about the tests. What is the substitution test? We already talked about it for something else, if you remember. We can say that constituents of a similar type can be replaced by another constituent. For example, we can replace an NP with an NP only. We cannot replace an NP with a VP or PP. So, if we say the cat with a thick white tail drank the milk, if we say the fat cat drank the milk, and if we say the cat drank the milk. So, this is basically a kind of generalization that I am trying to make and also asking you to make. You can say that the first component it differs in length, but it is basically talking about an NP. Now, let us talk about the second test, which is the coordination test. We say that conjunctions like and, but, or, these can help us to determine the status of constituents. How? So, we are basically conjoining different constituents. If we say the cat climbed a tall tree, the cat cried loudly, and said the cat climbed the tall tree and cried loudly. So, you can understand that climbed the tall tree is a VP, cried loudly is another VP, and we can conjoin a VP with another VP here. So, this is something that I am asking you to think about. This is an example of VP coordination, and we can conduct coordination tests to determine the status of constituents. The third test is the movement test, where we can say that certain group of words can move around as a unit. What is movement? One chunk of a sentence will be moving to a different part of a sentence. So, we will discuss an example here. The cat will put a toy on the table. So, we can take different constituents from A and put them to the front of the sentence. We can say on the table the cat will put a toy, but on the bed he will put a pencil, or the ball the cat will put on the table, but later he will put it on the chair. So, basically we refer to this phenomena as topicalization, and we are taking a chunk from the sentence and moving the entire chunk to a different position. We cannot randomly select some part. When we have to move something, we have to figure out that whether we are moving a particular chunk or a constituent or not. So, movement test is another test for identifying constituents in a sentence. Now, let us talk about something called the phrase structure rules. So, in generative grammar, the generalization of structures are represented by rules. So, you already know about rules, and we will see why we are talking about rules here again. We are saying that the rules generate the trees. Please pay attention to the term generate, because this is an important term in terms of linguistic theory as a whole. So, if we draw a tree, we need certain rules for the tree. We cannot draw the tree randomly or without any rules. So, the rules which help us to draw the trees are known as the phrase structure rules or PSR. So, they generate the phrase structure tree of a sentence. Phrase structure rules will generate the phrase structure tree. You already know how the trees look like. So, now let us talk about certain rules that we need in order to draw trees. Initially, we are talking about the rules associated with NP or noun phrases. So, this is something which is talking about the internal structure of an NP in terms of rules, and I hope you can think about some examples which are there in your mind. It will be really nice if you can note down some example phrases for yourself. NP can have only one N sitting inside. NP can have a D like the and N like the cat. NP can have D adjective phrase and N like the white cat, and NP can also have D adjective phrase N and another PP sitting inside the NP. So, this is your call to list the examples of internal structure of NP, but let me tell you that all these are rules that are meant for NPs. So, I am asking you to create rules of NPs for your language. There is a chance that the order in the rules are slightly different in your language. Maybe the D is not occurring before the N, but the position is something else. So, I am asking you to comment on the order. Now, let us learn about the principles of modification, and we will be talking about adjective phrases and adverb phrases here. So, we know that modifiers are always attached within the phrase they modify. This is something which is very important for our purpose, and if we consider the internal structure of adjective phrase, we can find that there is an adverb phrase sitting inside the adjective phrase, and then there is the adjective. And now, if we can consider the internal structure of the adverb phrase, we can say that there is one adverb phrase and another adverb. So, I have asked you to draw certain example of some adjective phrase and adverb phrase trees. So, I am asking you to draw very quickly and the very fat cat with the help of the phrase structure rules that we have just learned. Let us talk about prepositional phrases now. Let me also tell you that at times we call them postpositional phrases at times, because these are having different structures in different languages. So, for English, all the examples that we are discussing are taken from English, you have understood by now. So, PP can have one P and an NP sitting inside the PP. PP can have one P and NP which is optional. So, please consider the structure of the following sentences and again try to draw the trees for English examples. To the market with an X behind the tall tree. So, there are something which is sitting inside the PPs, right. So, I am not asking you the answer at this point, but you can of course do this by yourself. And I am asking also I am asking you to answer the question, does your language have different structures from the English PPs? Please try to figure out. Now, let us talk about the structure of the verb phrases. This is something that you can also consider from other perspectives. It is your call to think about the other perspectives like the number of NPs associated with the verbs, etc. So, you can find that the VP has just one verb and nothing else sitting inside it. VP can have one verb and then adverb phrase. VP can have verb, NP and adverb phrase. VP can also have adverb phrase, V, NP, NP, adverb phrase. So, I am asking you to draw trees for the following sentences. In fact, you can draw trees for the rules itself. So, you can try drawing trees for some rules, example sentences, and then try to draw trees for the sentences that I have given here. Frequently got the book from the store for 10 rupees, spared the student any embarrassment yesterday. So, we can have different structures of VP based on the argument structure that you can figure out. So, I am asking you to remember that the largest unit of syntactic analysis is the sentence. So, whenever we are talking about constituents, we are talking about some fragment of it, right, which is sitting inside one sentence. And sentences typically have one NP and VP, which will be linked through an abstract category. So, let us consider that the abstract category is T, which stands for tense, which is dominating the sentence and also linking the NP and VP. So, thus we can say that a sentence is a sentential phrase or a TP. So, if you are trying to draw a sentence now, I mean of course, you understood that this is fun, you can consider the sentence as a TP. So, by now we were drawing trees for phrases XPs, NP, PP, VP, etc. But now if you decide to draw an entire sentence, you can label the top of the tree as TP. So, now we are coming to the conclusion part of the lecture, and we are saying that sentences have certain words which are grouped together, and these are known as the constituents. So, when we try to define constituents, we say that certain words which are grouped together and act as a unit, these are the constituents. So, how do we find the constituents in a sentence? We try to conduct certain tests. So, we did discuss about certain tests in today's class. We said that there is something called a substitution test, something called a coordination test and movement test. So, just to remind you, in substitution set we said that you can replace one NP with NP only, you can replace one VP with VP only, you replace one XP with a similar kind of XP. Coordination is where you can conjoin two XPs together, which are basically constituents. For by XP you can consider any phrase, and we are talking about constituents here. And when we talked about movement as a test, we said that one constituent can be moved to a different part of a sentence where we are considering the chunk. So, if we consider movement, one entire constituent can be moved to a different part of a sentence that we have seen in terms of topicalization, for example. So, these are the tests to diagnose the constituents in a sentence. We also found that constituents are embedded one inside another to create a larger constituent. So, if you consider a sentence, there are of course different XPs like NP, VP, etc., which are different components of the sentence. We are saying that one constituent will be embedded inside another, which is very important in syntax for us to understand that this embedding is actually it is also related to recursion that we have already learnt about. So, embedding is helping us to create a larger constituent, finally a sentence. We learnt about something called phrase structure rules in today's class, and we said that phrase structure rules generate phrase structure trees of a sentence. So, trees are the hierarchical structures. So, by now we know that we can represent sentences in terms of either linear or hierarchical structure. So, these hierarchical structures are represented through the trees, and we say that the phrase structure rules, certain rules for discussing the phrase structures generate the trees. So, we have discussed the internal structure of different XPs or phrases. We talked about the different internal structure, different possible internal structures of NP, PP, VP, etc., and adjective phrase, adverb phrase as well. And I have also given you some sentences where you can draw the trees, and I told you that based on the rules you can list or figure out some or create some example sentences. So, this is now your turn to start drawing trees for both phrases and sentences, and please remember, when we talked about different kind of phrases and learnt about their rules, we also said that if you are trying to draw a sentence, you can label it as a TP, as we are saying that NP and VP are two components of a sentence, but these are linked through an abstract unit called T, which is basically stands for tense, and we are labeling a sentence as a tense phrase or TP. So, these are the key references. Thank you.